Hello everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces Talks Music. So today I am talking about Unknown Pleasures by the Joy Division. This album was first released on June 15th of 1979. It's the first album by the Joy Division. Over time, it has become incredibly successful. At the time of its release, it was fairly successful. During my research, I found that it wasn't really until they released the Transmission 12-inch single that people really started buying Unknown Pleasures. Also, at that time, they were touring with the Buzzcocks, and that was giving them a lot of good promotion as well. So the initial release was a little bit rough, but once people started catching on, it started to pick up. It's a really great album. I have an unpopular opinion about it, which is I feel that the album is overproduced. When the album first came out, half of the band, I think it was specifically Peter Hook and Bernard Sumner, didn't really appreciate the way that it sounded. It sounded different than the Joy Division. And Martin Hannett is the person who produced it. A really good producer, very into really strange stuff. I think Peter Hook literally said he didn't like it because it was trying to sound like Pink Floyd. Martin Hannett was using a lot of echoing, a lot of ways to try to build space in the studio so that it sounded like things were further away than they were, or that you were in a very large room listening. They also slowed some things down quite a bit from the live shows. And the track choice is a little bit interesting. Now, of course, the band had a say in all this stuff, but Martin Hannett has said that he loved working with the Joy Division because they had no clue. They would just do whatever they were told. They wouldn't argue at all because it was really their first time. Now, they had signed with RCA earlier, and they recorded the Warsaw demos, which is, I think, an album you can actually buy now. I think it has been officially released. But Joy Division wasn't happy with the way those demos were mixed, so they actually asked to get released out of their contract. So they had been in the studio before. They had worked with a producer. I believe, personally, the reason that they wanted to give up on that contract is because they were changing as a band. Everything that they had recorded on Warsaw, they were basically done with. They were really coming into their own as musicians, and the music that they were creating was different and better, a lot better. There is kind of a line where you can hear the Joy Division become the Joy Division. And I appreciate the early stuff. I really do enjoy it. I've listened to that stuff to death. But there is a line. You can tell. So I believe that's the reason they got out of the RCA contract. So then they signed with Factory Records. They did get another offer. During my research, I found that Genetic Records, I think is what it was called, had given them an offer, but their manager at the time decided that working with Factory would be better because Factory gave the band 50% of the profit of the albums. They didn't just pay him a fee and then release the album and scrape in a bunch of money. They literally paid the artists based on how much the artists made, which is pretty incredible. And I really, really appreciate that the band members and the manager of the band had that much faith in the band to say, actually, in the long run, this will be a better deal, because that's how good the Joy Division is. And I do believe that that really paid off for them, even though, of course, Factory Records has all kinds of financial trouble because of how expensive the things are that they want to be doing. Running the Hacienda and making these extravagant album covers, you know, they really went through the money. If you ever get a chance to watch a documentary about Factory Records, I do highly recommend you check it out. Tony Wilson is a crazy, wonderful person, and it's really, I hate to say it, but it's kind of enjoyable to watch them try, you know, to watch them do their best to do the right thing, but at the same time not understand how to manage money, you know. It's kind of sad and funny and strange. The whole thing is really strange. It's definitely worth checking out. And I do have to say, I am incredibly, incredibly happy that this album got made at all. I'm ecstatic that Factory Records did take them and that the band was willing to work with probably the one producer that Factory Records had. Even though they didn't love the results, at least it was captured. Because if this album was not made, I don't believe New Order probably would have formed. And if New Order didn't form, then me, living in the middle of the United States in Utah, never would have heard of the Joy Division. You know, the Joy Division could have just been some footnote in a punk rock magazine somewhere, and that would have been horrible because they're such an incredible band. So I'm very, very thankful for the work that was put into this album. But I do gotta say, I agree with a couple of the band members that it just doesn't really match what the Joy Division was doing at the time. I'm going to start going over this track by track, but I do want to say before we get going, if you don't own this, I would highly, highly recommend that you buy the 2-disc version so that you get the album and you get a live show from the time period. Because I guarantee you, if you listen to the live show as often as you listen to the album, you will end up enjoying the live show more. I really honestly believe that. It's an amazing album. I'm really glad it exists. And for the time period, this is another weird factor that needs to be considered. At the time, it probably was pretty mind-blowing. You know, today there are so many bands who were influenced by the Joy Division and who do what the Joy Division did, that listening to this, it just sounds like another drop in the bucket, to be perfectly honest. But I imagine that at the time, it was probably rather revolutionary. Even though the production value, I feel like, was looking backwards, I think the music was looking forwards. I do want to say, I do agree with Peter Hook when he says that Martin Hannett was a good producer, but the bottom line is the music is great. And that's what sells the album. Martin Hannett does not sell this album. It does not sell because there's echoes in a recording of a gate opening and closing and somebody eating potato chips. You know what I mean? That is not why this album is successful. It's successful because it's the Joy Division. So pick up the double disc so that you can hear that live stuff. Don't bother to try to chase it down on album. There's just no point. The honest truth is, if you've not heard it before and you buy the record, you're going to be bored and you're going to stop playing it. It's too much work to pull the thing out, flip it over, blah, blah, blah. Do not do that. Buy it on iTunes or something. Put it on your phone. Listen to it. Listen to it as often as you can. And try to listen to the live version at least as much, if not more. Because that live show is incredible. That's the Joy Division. That's the true Joy Division. You know, it would have been wonderful if Factory Records had a producer that was able to capture the live sound of a band. But they didn't, and that's fine. The album got made, and that's all that's really important. All right, let's go over these tracks. So the album opens up with Disorder, and this is a decent tune. I don't think I would have used it as the album opener because it's not like the greatest tune on the album, but it is a decent tune. I really appreciate that it's here. I'm glad it's on the album. If you do go to that second disc and you listen to Disorder there, it is insane. Honestly, I kind of think it's a car crash, really. Bernard Sumner is not the greatest guitar player. I'm sure he's a lot better now than he was back then, but he's really not a great guitar player. Now, he, of course, wrote most of the music for the Joy Division, so I'm not saying he's not a good musician, because he absolutely is. But as a guitar player, he's really so-so, and he gets a little bit lost, I think, on his fretboard when they're doing Disorder in the live show, and it just sounds crazy but it's so great. It's faster, it's harder. Ian Curtis is more emotional. He's just so much more emotional live than he is on the record. So I really love this tune, the live version especially, even though it really is a giant mess. It's great. It's really great. Day of the Lords, excellent tune. I do feel like a lot of the emotion's been pulled out of the studio version of this tune. And it's also partly the musicians. I don't want to make it sound like it's just the producer. I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know what the producer was asking them to do or how many takes they got. They recorded it over 3 weekends. So I think they only had like 6 days to put the album together. The album has 10 tracks. So they went a little bit over and beyond there. Most albums will run about 8 tracks. So I'm not sure, but I do feel like if the band had more experience in the studio and with being able to listen to the playback and decide, wow, is that the way I want the playback to be? I think that Ian could have punched this harder. But at the same time, on the live version, first off, it's a lot faster, which is great. There's a lot more energy in it and a lot more passion in it. Also, Peter Hook sings backup vocals with Ian Curtis. Now, it's very rare. It's only on a few lines. But when he screams that, "Where will it end?" at the end, Peter Hook's doing that with him. I mean, the power that they have that's just not on the album. If you just compare Day of the Lords, do this. If you get the 2 CDs, just do this. Play Day of the Lords on the album, then play the live version. I mean, there's just no question, you know. And live can always be that way. You can always just say, well, live's always better, and that's fine, but you at least should try to capture that. If live truly is always better, then make the studio as live as possible, knowing that live will still be better. And I'm not saying they should just set up and play, because I do appreciate that they took the time to get those drum tracks down and to get those guitar tracks down, because the Joy Division aren't the greatest musicians. You know, Ian Curtis, I don't know how many takes he had to do in order to make sure that he was on pitch the whole time, because he's not the greatest singer alive, you know what I mean? He's perfect for the Joy Division. He's an amazing singer. And for the Joy Division, Bernard's an amazing guitar player. Peter Hook's a great bass player. Stephen Morris is a great drummer, you know what I mean? But laying down tracks is a great idea. They can't just go in the studio and play live, or you're going to get the Disorder situation, right? Where it's just this train wreck that nobody can listen to. So I'm glad they were in the studio. I'm glad they were recording, but I feel like they needed to push harder. They weren't pushing in the studio, and it really does show. There's a big difference in Day of the Lords. And Day of the Lords is one of the best tunes on the album, I think, because there are Joy Division songs that are a little bit slower. Now, this is even slower than what they played it live, but it works, you know? The production tricks that Martin Hannett was using on some of these songs kind of works. It kind of works, even though the live, I believe, is still better. All right, so then we get to Candidate. So I need to bring something up here. The Joy Division walked into the studio with probably 30 tunes under their belt that they'd been playing live for at least 6 months. They had a huge list of songs to choose from, and Candidate is not a great tune. I'm not even sure why they picked that for the album, to be perfectly honest with you. It's so monotone, and it doesn't build in any way. It's just this weird drone thing. And they had so many other great choices. In the studio, they literally recorded a song called The Kill. They have 2 songs called The Kill. This is basically the second song that they made called The Kill. You can hear this on Still because it was left on the cutting room floor for some reason, instead of Candidate being left on the cutting room floor. And I hear people say, well, they didn't have time to finish that one. It would have been there if they could have finished it. And of course, all I want to say is, well, the reason they couldn't finish it is because they were recording Candidate, you know? Like, what are you doing? No, they could have put The Kill on there, but more importantly, they had Exercise One. And Exercise One opens still, and it's incredible. It sounds so good. Also, they had Transmission. And I can totally handle somebody saying, well, now wait a minute. Factory Records had already decided that they needed a single. I don't know why, but back in the day, singles were more popular. And I wonder if it's just because they were cheaper. I'm not sure, but 45s and 12-inch singles were a big deal in the 70s and the 80s. You know, I'm sure all the way back to the 50s, of course. But that's a trend that slowly has grown out of the music industry because the albums have less value because they pick their best tunes and they just release them as singles. You know, it's crazy to buy all the Beatles out records and not have all the Beatles songs that you know. You have to turn around and buy these, I guess they're like greatest hits, you know what I mean? Compilations of singles from the bands. Same thing happens with the Joy Division. You know, if you want to hear Transmission, you got to buy Substance. And Substance is a weird record because it's got stuff from 77 all the way through 80. You know, I mean, talk about just this schizophrenic, crazy release. But there are amazing Joy Division songs that you will not have from just buying Unknown Pleasures and Closer. And still, even, you have to buy Substance to get the stuff that you know. And another unfortunate thing about that is if you buy Substance, you might be like, this is all I need. I don't have to listen to Unknown Pleasures or Closer or Still. There's great stuff on all of them, especially if you buy the double CD versions so that you get the live shows at the end. For all three of those. Still already came with a live show. If you buy the CD version, you get 2 live shows. Incredible, incredible releases. So they could have put The Kill on here, they could have put Exercise One on here, or they could have put Transmission on here. And they chose Candidate, and I don't know why. And I'm not saying Candidate shouldn't have been recorded. I am definitely not saying that. But it should have been a B-side. You know, there are great Joy Division B-sides that you only get on Substance, and probably only if you buy the right version of Substance. You know, because it has to be long enough that they could get all the single releases on there and include all the B-sides. I don't know. This should have been a B-side, straight up. This should not have been on the album. Insight. Insight is incredible. An excellent, excellent tune. A great way to hear, in addition to the live album that was released with Unknown Pleasures, another great way to hear these tunes is the first Peel session. The first Peel session, I think, is Exercise One, Insight, She's Lost Control, Transmission. Just an incredible track list. It's an amazing Peel session, truly. That's a great way to hear Insight. It's all right on the album. This is another tune that's a little bit slower. Another tune where it's really enjoyable to listen to the words. Ian Curtis writes incredible lyrics, of course. Amazing, amazing lyrics. But a lot of the faster tunes, it can get garbled. You're enjoying the band as much as you're enjoying the lyrics. Sometimes the lyrics sort of take the spotlight for the Joy Division. I feel like Insight is one of those. I love the music for Insight, but it's very strange. It's a very interesting song, but the lyrics are amazing. It's great. It's got this... It doesn't start, I swear, for like 30 seconds because, of course, there's weird stuff going on, right? Martin Hannett's got crazy stuff going on. He's got the gate opening. He's probably got somebody chewing, I feel like. It's just weird. It's really just weird. But the song itself is really great. There's a very bold choice in Insight. Stephen Morris got an electronic drum so that he could make different sounds when he hit it with his stick, right? One of the sounds is a very high-pitched squeal. And for this song, when it explodes, he just goes nuts on this drum pad with these ear-splitting, high-pitched squeals. I can't imagine seeing this live. Just listening to it, it sounds crazy. I'm sure most of the audience was like covering their ears because of this sound. And on the album, it's really buried in the mix. And I don't believe that's a great choice. It is still in the song, but it's so buried, it loses its power and its drive and its passion, right? Things that we've already talked about this album kind of losing. And I'm not sure that burying it, I do understand the impulse because it's so shocking and loud and bright and piercing. But I don't know. I don't believe I agree with that choice, even though Insight is a strange tune. But I don't feel like you need to fix it. Just listen to the words. All right, we get to New Dawn Fades. This is Chris's favorite Joy Division tune, New Dawn Fades. My favorite's The Sound of Music, which is not on anything, but I love it. But yeah, Chris loves New Dawn Fades. It's a great tune. It's another tune that's a little bit slower. The lyrics kind of come out a little bit, but the passion that Ian Curtis has while singing this song is really missed on the album. I do not feel that this one kind of gets by because it's a slower tune and it can use a little more echo or whatever. This is so good live, so good. And it's good on the album. It's all right. It's not like Candidate. It's a good tune, but no, live, you've got to hear this live. It's incredible. She's Lost Control is another example that's kind of like that. It's a good tune. It's not my favorite Joy Division tune. I probably overplayed it, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's weird on the album because he's got a lot of echo on his voice. And Ian Curtis sort of had that impulse. He did this amazing thing live. He would sing She's Lost Control again, She's Lost Control, and then he'd just scream. And it just builds through as the guitar goes into that building into that with him doing that scream it's just incredible. So I can kind of see where the echo impulse came from, but it does not serve the same purpose. It sounds weird. It just sounds weird. Also, this is another example where Peter Hook sings backup with Ian. And I don't know, it just adds power. I really believe that's the reason they're doing it. I think that Peter Hook has a really great ear for pitch. And this is a weird topic. I would have enjoyed New Order more if Peter Hook was singing rather than Bernard Sumner. I like Bernard a lot. I love the music of the Joy Division. I love the music of New Order. I do feel that Peter Hook's probably a better singer. If you've had the opportunity to see Peter Hook and the Light touring around doing Joy Division tunes and doing New Order tunes, they sound incredible. Truly, he does an incredible job of these tunes. He's more aggressive than Ian Curtis is, and I believe he has a better ear for pitch than Ian Curtis does. Now, unfortunately, right when New Order was getting it together, there's a bootleg of Peter Hook doing a live show. Peter Hook sings for New Order on one bootleg that I have found, and I listened to it, and it was terrible. It just did not sound good. And I don't know if Peter Hook was having a bad night. I don't know if it took him a while to learn. I assume it would be a process, right? If it took him a while to figure out how to do it while playing the bass and all of that, it didn't work at all. And I believe that probably is the reason he chose not to be the lead singer for New Order, which is really too bad. Because that first album's a transition album anyway. The bootlegs from that time are clearly a transition from Ian Curtis's death and the Joy Division dying to New Order. It would be okay if Peter Hook had to take some time to get good at it, because he really did get good at it, and I think he would have been really great for New Order. But it's really great to hear him singing backup with Ian Curtis. I think he helps Ian Curtis with pitch, and of course, they add power by having two people sing at the same time. Shadowplay. So Shadowplay's next. Oh, I believe side 2 opens with She's Lost Control. I think we had the flip there. I think they have 5 tunes on both sides. Shadowplay is not my favorite Joy Division tune. It's an old tune, but it is the tune that they played on television. when they were on the Granada Report or whatever it was called. So I guess you could consider it one of their more popular tunes. It's kind of funny though. Speaking of popular tunes, in the live album that's tacked on the end, there's a couple people in the audience who really want to hear No Love Lost. And through the entire show, I swear, after every song, people are cheering and clapping, and then there's this one guy going, "No Love Lost." It's pretty incredible. I mean, everybody's so hyped at the show. The ending of the show, where they play Transmission, the ending of Transmission is just incredible. The audience is just screaming by the end. It's crazy. But Shadow Play, it's an old tune. It's not a great tune. Personally, I probably wouldn't have put it on the album, except for the fact that it's what they played on TV. So people kind of knew it. I would assume that people who were big Joy Division fans knew that song. So they were probably expecting it to be there. I feel the same way about Transmission, to be perfectly honest with you. I feel like people were expecting Transmission to be on here. But I don't know. This is an iffy tune. I think live it's a bit better than it is on the album, but it's not a great tune all the way around. I'm glad it's there, and I see why it's there. It makes sense. Next up is Wilderness. Once again, on the live album, it's just faster. It's just better. Peter Hook is singing backup vocals. There's a lot of power. There's a lot of speed. It's a great tune live. On the album, it's okay. You know, during my research, I was reading some of the reviews when the album came out, and they had one pretty scathing review where the person talked about how side 2 of this record is just kind of a boring slog. I kind of agree. Not completely. It's just compared to those live shows. You know, and I do understand that at the time, most people probably hadn't seen the Joy Division live, right? They had nothing to compare it to. And like I said earlier, this album was probably a very big deal right at that time. But I feel like its staying power is because of the songs, and it would have been even bigger if they could have captured more of a live atmosphere rather than the overproduced squashing that we have on the record. Next up is Interzone. Interzone is it's an old tune. It's one that they brought in. It's an incredibly cool tune because it's a duet with Ian Curtis and Peter Hook. It's kind of this call and response. Peter Hook would sing, "I walk through the city limits," and then Ian Curtis mumbles something that I can't really tell what he's saying. And then Peter Hook sings, and then Ian Curtis sings, and then Peter Hook sings. It's a really cool, interesting Joy Division artifact, and I believe an indication that Peter Hook, of course, could have handled Live New Order. He could have done it. He absolutely could have, just like his new shows are proving, of course. I shouldn't really say new. It was probably 10 years ago that he was really touring around. He literally did all Joy Division songs. Each time he went out, he would do like, this show is going to be Unknown Pleasures and all of the other stuff that we did around that time. And then when they toured again, this show is going to be Closer and all of the other stuff that we did around that time. And then he literally started going through the New Order records. Really great stuff. And you can pick these up. You can pick them up on disc or record, or I think right out of the iTunes store, I imagine. They're great shows. I hope you got to see them. I was lucky enough to get to see them because we were in Chicago. I also got to see the Swans there. That's another story. Great live shows in Chicago. Wire, we got to see Wire a bunch. Excellent shows. So Interzone on the record is completely tame. You can barely understand what Ian Curtis is saying because it's so low, and I don't know. It's not what it is live. And because it's an older tune, It's not as powerful and important as some of the later Joy Division tunes, but it's a good one. I like it, and I don't think it's great on the record at all. And then we get to I Remember Nothing. I Remember Nothing is another B-side, another tune that absolutely should not have been on this record, I gotta say. It doesn't build to anything. It's just this weird droning thing over and over. They've got sounds of breaking glass and, all kinds of weird crap going on, but no, it's no way. They really should have gone with Exercise 1 and Transmission, and maybe even The Kill. They could have done those three instead of some of the tracks on this album. And I feel like the album would have been even more successful than it is. Right now, I feel like it's like a cult classic. Like if you know it, you know. You know what I mean? But most people don't know it. I think a really good example of this is the album artwork. Of course, it was done by Peter Saville. Brilliant, brilliant work. I think Bernard picked it. I think there's a debate between Morris and Bernard for who found it and who picked it. It is, of course, the radio waves being emitted from a pulsar as it spins. So you've got these weird jagged lines. And it has become so iconic and so huge that even Disney picked it up. There's literally a Mickey Mouse t-shirt with these pulsar waves, creating the image of Mickey Mouse. Like, I can't, whenever I see someone with a Joy Division shirt on with this pulsar symbol on it, I can't say, I love the Joy Division. I used to, but people would look at me like I was crazy, because they have no idea what I'm talking about. It has grown beyond the Joy Division, to be perfectly honest with you. But at the time, of course, it was a very interesting, stark, cool record cover. I think Peter Saville obviously did an incredible job. All right, well, that is the album Unknown Pleasures. A great album. It truly is a great album. I know I've talked a lot of craziness about it, but if you can get that live stuff, get it. I do honestly believe you'll be able to find things that you appreciate in that you just can't find on the album. There's more in the live recordings than there is on the album. But thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button. If you want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe. We have a lot of content, and have a great day.